Hi guys, welcome to Law Media. Thank you so much for allowing us to serve with truth, honesty, and perseverance. My name is Sarah. I'm going to be your host today, and I have my lovely co-host, Sunny Max. And today we're introducing a guest speaker to come on and talk about police brutality, mainly the Breonna Taylor case. And we have Mr. Wes Sigmiller.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, so basically what happened, we've all been experiencing the past couple of months a backlash from the people who are fed up with the police brutality. They're fed up with the murders. They're fed up with the unaccountability of government. So on March 13th in Louisville, Kentucky, there's a young lady named Breonna Taylor. She was actually killed during a botched raid. It's a lot of facts that are a little sketchy, but from what we do know, 3 police officers that obtained the warrant, they basically obtained the warrant and said that Breonna Taylor was dating some drug dealer and they need to search that residence. So we're not sure if they even have the correct residence. We're not sure if the information that they gave the judge to get the warrant was correct. It's a lot of things that we don't know, but we do know is that one of the officers, Mr. Brett Hankinson, he was actually a detective, not just a regular police officer. He was a police detective. He was fired for misconduct for firing 10 rounds into the home of Breonna Taylor. He fired rounds through her sliding glass window and through her sliding glass patio door and through her window, both of which had blinds, and this happened after midnight, so they couldn't see in there at all. So this particular officer was fired. However, he was charged not with her murder or not with the killing, unintentional, intentional, whatever. He was charged with wanton endangerment.
Wanton endangerment. So there was a lot of rage at the verdict of that. And what do you think is the solution? Well, the family went and filed a wrongful death suit for her life because they felt that that was the only other option that they had. So we brought Wes Sigmiller on, who is a retired personal injury attorney who has practiced for over 45 years and had many large verdicts and a lot of experience in that field. And we wanted to ask him about that type of wrongful death suit.
Well, I'm not so sure there was a warrant involved here. This is one of those what's called warrantless searches, where you can go in under certain circumstances that a judge authorizes, and you can do one of those. And they then went in, and I believe they started shooting. Many officers are trained to shoot first and ask questions later. And in this situation, wanton endangerment was charged to one of the officers because he shot through a wall, which allowed the slug to go into an adjacent apartment, and that was the wanton endangerment.
So there are no charges, and it was 3 officers, Jonathan Mattingly, Miles Carsgrove, and Brett Hankinson. So there are no charges for the killing, either intentional, unintentional. Like they just give no explanations.
Well, of course, remember, to get murder, you have to have mens rea, which is mental state. You have to have a mental state, which rises to the level of a premeditation sometimes, or if it's reckless, you have to have a mental state where you realize you have a gun, you realize you're shooting it will cause harm. So there's certain levels of that you have to have a murder charge. So that was one of the reluctancy that the prosecutor had in this situation. They didn't think that they had that.
Do you think negligible homicide would fit these particular facts?
Sure, negligent homicide would fit because this is negligent, meaning not willful. Therefore, if it's not willful, you don't have the mental state, the mens rea, required to make murder, which is willful.
Maybe depraved heart murder?
Sure. All these crimes require certain things to be proved. And you have to have each element of the crime proved. So what the prosecutor does, he looks at all the crimes that could be possibly committed. He looks at the facts to see if he can prove those crimes with this law that requires those facts to be proved. And if he doesn't think he has a strong case, then he won't charge that. Many times when someone gets arrested, they're overcharged. You're charged with 15 crimes, felonies and misdemeanors, as many as they can get, and they throw all those up against the wall and see what can stick. The opposite is true here, if you think about it.
They made sure.
They charged with one crime, where in the reverse situation, you'd probably see 8 or 10 crimes up against the wall here to see which one of them would stick. That's an interesting factor of this.
Why do you think that may be?
Well, it's because it's the police department. Remember, police have enjoyed for generations a privileged status in our society, and they have become used to that. It's only in the last few years that we now have, everyone has a cell phone, everybody can take a video. And now police conduct is under scrutiny, it's under a microscope. And if they're going to change a complete culture that's been in place for 20 years, it's going to take more than what you're seeing right now.
One thing I spoke to Sunny about earlier, we were just discussing how we're going to approach everything. And I remember you telling me a little bit about the culture that police officers have, kind of a band of brotherhood or like a blue solidarity. Do you think sometimes officers of the law care, or they care more about, or they prioritize their duty to each other than their duty to the public?
Yes. It used to be that the police protected the public. Now it's the police protect themselves from the public. So that's been a paradigm shift.
Earlier, Sunny and I spoke about some of the educational things we recommended, similar to ROTC or some of the home ec programs. Maybe we can begin to introduce programs like a civility course, where people who may want a future in public security or being a police officer, maybe they can start to learn civility and diversity. Do you think that would be something?
I don't personally think that would work. There's been a suggestion that police departments be defunded, which means that not all the money is taken away from the police departments, but much of the money is taken away that militarizes police. Police now get excess military equipment from the military, so that they have huge vehicles and they have all sorts of military equipment now, military grade equipment that they can use. So demilitarizing the police is one thing, and making it more of a professional force has been one of the recommendations. Now, another recommendation, which I think is pretty ingenious, is to make each police officer personally liable for their conduct. They aren't now.
Right.
Because they're public, they're part of a public entity, and as you know as a lawyer, public entities have immunity. They have public immunity, and police even have more than that, because they have their unions, which are very strong.
Right.
Which all sorts of rules are involved when a policeman is brought up on charges. There's a certain number of days that have to go by before a final interview is given to the police officer. All sorts of things have to occur now in a police situation. So making a police officer personally liable and removing the shield of a public entity would require that a police officer personally get an insurance policy.
When I was reading some of that, like the qualified immunity and the unions, do you think that the unions act not to serve the public and serve police officers as servants of the public, but to serve police at large as a basically like they're fixing the police, or they would like to insulate the police from...
Oh, absolutely. Insulate's a good word. They're going to protect the police from liability, for example. That's why we have these protections now that prohibit prosecutors, prohibit internal affairs departments from getting facts, basic facts on what happened. So you know that what happens many times is a report is written which comes out completely different than the facts that the recording showed. In the old days, that report was golden because you didn't have a recording, but now everybody's got a cell phone with a recording, and that's making the police pretty mad. They can't get away with that anymore. They can't get away with these reports that sugarcoat and mask what really happened. So what this recommendation was is that they become personally liable. Now, a police officer to work in the police department would be required to have an insurance policy. And the insurance company is going to insure that police officer if he's had a series of complaints, if he has drawn his gun too many times, if he wasn't able to pass the courses that he was supposed to pass. He couldn't get the insurance policy. He couldn't be a policeman. So I thought that was an interesting way to fix the problem.
So it's similar to maybe like a doctor has a
Malpractice
malpractice
Yes,
insurance.
malpractice insurance to protect him against
And-
malpractice suits. Yes.
Or, okay, so that makes sense. And then you would have to pay every month some kind of
you'd have to pay your insurance
monthly
policy.
fee.
And if you had a complaint, but it was not a really strong complaint, then your premium would go up. So your incentive is to be more careful as a police officer, just like your incentive is to be a safer driver. So that was one way.
So there's accountability there.
I think that's actually really smart because there is no qualified immunity. There is no police union that is a buffer between them and accountability for their actions.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's pretty
I'll
smart.
tell you what, an insurance company that wants to insure a department, individuals in a department, isn't going to care much what the union says. They're going to want to know whether or not they have liability in the event that officer doesn't perform correctly. Is the insurance company going to have to pay money for that? That's their concern. Insurance companies are numbers and money. That's their main concern. So if a police officer doesn't perform correctly and he is a risk, insurance companies are all about risk. That's the big word. He won't be able to get insurance. He won't be able to be a police officer.
So when Breonna Taylor's family filed a wrongful death suit, who did they sue?
Well, that's the problem with the suits. Lots of suits are coming in now, large verdicts in these cases, and guess where that money comes from? You, and me. It's public funds. If it came from a police officer's insurance policy, let's say he has a requirement of at least a $1 million insurance policy. If he can't get that, he can't be a police officer. If he can't keep it, he can't be a police officer.
That's really smart. I think a lot of our viewers should definitely present these ideas or their own form to their congressman or their senator because I didn't think of that, but luckily we have an expert.
Well, if you turn the lawyers loose on a problem, the problem usually goes away. So, you remember that when cars didn't have seatbelts?
Right.
Well, manufacturers didn't want to put a seatbelt in there. It was expensive. Cars didn't have glass that didn't shatter. Windshields shattered. Now they have shatterproof glass. Now they have seatbelts. Cars didn't have airbags. You think vehicle manufacturers voluntarily put those things in their vehicles? They did not. Because that keeps the price down. What they did is they got sued for not putting those things in their vehicles.
And then sometimes Congress acts or they make regulations when it's like a lot.
That's one way to do it. But shielding the car companies from suit was not going to happen. People weren't allowing that to occur. So car companies, manufacturers became liable for those things they did not do. All started out with the Corvair. Remember the Corvair case? Ralph Nader wrote a book called Unsafe at Any Speed. Unsafe at Any Speed is the name of the book. It was about the Corvair that had a rear engine gas tank just in front of the rear engine. The gas tank was placed. Any type of a tap on the rear would break the gas tube and spray the occupants of the car with gasoline, which would then ignite and incinerate the occupants of the car.
I remember those facts, but I don't remember the name of the case. I went to law school a very long time ago, regardless of how I left. But I remember the facts, like that scenario, but I don't remember the names of the cases. So the settlements, let's say if people that are watching, if that happened to a family member of theirs, or maybe a family member of theirs was killed while incarcerated, or somebody came in their cousin's house and shot up everything, what would they do, or how would they go about getting a wrongful death suit or a wrongful death settlement?
Well, there's not wrongful death, but there's also police brutality cases where people are injured and maimed for life, not killed. Those cases are also good. Those are called civil rights cases. And civil rights attorneys, many of them specialize in those types of cases. They know how to get around some of the impediments that are raised to protect police. They know how to do that. And if this case, for example, this case you've got here, this Breonna case, if it ever got to a courtroom in front of a jury, if it ever got through the front door of a courtroom, they, at the police department and the county and city, knew what would happen. And that's why they settled the case.
And we also, just to talk about Breonna a little bit, she was 26 years old and she was emergent. A lot of people are saying she was an emergency tech. That's not true. She was emergency room tech. It's completely different. A lot of the reports are showing that it sounds like she worked in an ambulance, and we love people that work on ambulance. We love all essential workers, and we need and respect them. But she was a little bit more advanced than what the media is saying. She worked in emergency room.
She was a first responder, yeah, first line.
So,
Can you imagine that in front of a jury? Can you imagine all those facts being put in front of a jury?
I can, and I hope that jurors would want to have justice sought in any situation.
The next time that I see a police car that says to protect and to serve, that will have new meaning.
Well, it depends on who you're talking about.
Right.
Protect and to serve the public,
or
protect and to serve other fellow police officers.
Right.
So that shift has taken place. It's done. That shift is over.
Right. So we just want to thank you guys for joining us today, and please leave comments. We would love to hear what you guys have to say, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much for choosing Law Media Team.